Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes were enemies, political enemies. They're both Republicans. They both consider themselves right-wingers. But Charlie Kirk was more of an institutional Republican, and so he wanted to be kind of a little to the right of Mitt Romney, but basically a Mitt Romney Republican. In other words, women should be back, in their place in the bedroom and the kitchen, and he made no bones about that. And minorities should just kind of keep quiet, and slowly things will get better. And queer people should just kind of vanish into the woodwork, but we don't need to be hating on them. Racism, yeah, it's a problem, but we can ignore it. I mean, the Republican Party has been doing this basically since the Nixon presidency. Richard Nixon, with his war on drugs and his Southern strategy, these were pure racism. These are pure appeals to the racists in America. And at that time, in the 1960s, when Nixon was using this kind of rhetoric and doing this kind of stuff, you had large chunks of the South that were still voting Democratic, because the Democrats, prior to the mid-1960s, prior to the Kennedy administration, the Democrats had been essentially the party of the Klan. They'd been the racist party. It was Democratic President Woodrow Wilson who played Birth of a Nation, the famous recruiting film for the Klan that led to a massive resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, played that in the White House. And it went on to be, the biggest movie of the year all across the United States. So anyhow, the Republicans thought, and Nixon and his friends thought, well, we'll pick up the racist vote, but we're not going to be racist. I mean, we'll make racist things happen. We'll make it hard for black people. We'll make it hard to enforce anti-discrimination laws. We'll make it hard for black people to vote, and brown people and Asian people and Native Americans, whatever. But we're just not going to be open about it. About the closest they came was when Ronald Reagan was running for president. The first speech he gave after he received the official endorsement of his party at the Republican convention, first speech he gave was in Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is the town, or the Neshoba, if I'm mispronouncing it, apologies, but the Neshoba County Fair near Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is just right down the street. I mean, like within a few miles of where Schwimmer and Cheney and Goodman and, am I missing a name? Were brutally murdered by local police officers who were also Klan members. And this was made into the movie Mississippi Burning, and there's been movies and songs written about it and so on. And so that's where Reagan went to give his opening speech, and it was about states' rights, which everybody understood was code for not letting black people vote or participate economically. But nonetheless, I mean, even with this kind of fairly visible to those of us who are paying attention, explicit racism in the Republican Party and anti-Semitism in the Republican Party, and frankly, openly pro-Nazi policies in the Republican Party, up until Donald Trump ran for president, it had largely been just like ignored. It was like a conspiracy of silence between the media and the GOP, and frankly, the Democratic Party as well. I mean, the Democrats had their problem with the racists pre-1960s, and they still have, problems with racism and other kinds of bigotry within the Democratic Party. So basically, everybody just said, let's just pretend this doesn't exist. And now, with this younger generation of Republicans, you've got the Charlie Kirk Republicans who want to say, yeah, we'll continue to pretend racism doesn't exist, and that the primary motivating factor for much of our base is not race. We'll just pretend that. And we'll pretend that we're really about big ideas and, smaller government and greater efficiency and lower taxes and dealing with the debt and all that kind of stuff. And then you got Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is open in his admiration of Adolf Hitler. He hates Jews, and he talks about it. He's just right up front about it. He hates black people, and he's right up front about that. I mean, Nick Fuentes, his followers are called groypers. These are the people who are, generally speaking, and it's always a danger to generalize about any group of people, but generally speaking, these are the people who who are really seriously peddling hate in the United States, who are promoting Nazi-like propaganda, fascist propaganda, and who are proud of it. And in fact, Nick and his groypers once crashed one of Charlie Kirk's meetings and did it so successfully that, he's the Pippi the Frog people, by the way, and asking hostile questions, did it so successfully that they ran off. There was some politician that was, J.D. Vance, ran him off the stage. So anyhow, these are quotes from Fuentes. Quote, Jews are running society. Women need to shut up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And a conservative writer, a guy by the name of Rod Dreher, he's a close friend of J.D. Vance's, he said, quote, I am told by somebody in a position to know that something like 30 to 40% of D.C. Republican staffers under the age of 30 are groypers. In other words, Fuentes is, as Michelle Goldberg writes, Fuentes' politics are ascendant. She says plenty of conservatives, especially Jewish ones, abhor Fuentes' growing clout. He reached and so what happened last week was Tucker Carlson, who's got one of the number one YouTube shows out there, for the right wing for young people, has Nick Fuentes on his show, and he basically whitewashes everything he has to say, and presents him as a fairly reasonable guy. And Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, says that the people who are criticizing Tucker Carlson for having Nick Fuentes on are, quote, a venomous coalition who are sowing division. So now you've got the Heritage Foundation backing Tucker Carlson, normalizing Nick Fuentes. Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes in the White House just a little while ago. He's been normalized by the Republican Party. This is the new face of the GOP. And I think Democrats need to be paying attention to that and need to be publicizing it and be talking about it. Because I get it that there's many of them, and particularly the consultant class, who are saying, don't do that. Because all you do is you give Nick Fuentes more power when you publicize his name, when you mention his name. Well, he's already got power. He's got considerable power. And what we're watching right now is the transformation of the Republican Party from pre-Trump, from a political party, one whose policies you may disagree with, but a legitimate and serious political party in America, to a neo-Nazi or neo-fascist movement. And, this movement has essentially now seized control of the GOP. And, some cracks are starting to show up. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the more surprising ones. But I think this is fascinating. I think it's something to keep an eye on. Also, our good news alert. This is amazing. There's a Portland coffee shop that's raised over $300,000 to feed the homeless. People donating from as far away as Norway, Australia, Ireland, and Egypt. It's called Heretic Coffee. And they're offering what they call their Snap Breakfast, free to anyone. All you have to do is show your Snap card, and you can pick up your breakfast anytime between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. And also here in the Pacific Northwest, there's a burger chain, Burgerville, which has just, great food, just spectacular food, and for a fast food restaurant. And they're offering the same thing, or a variation on it. They haven't raised $300,000. They're just giving away food. And you just have to bring your kid and your Snap card, and you get a free breakfast or a free burger special meal. Yeah, I'm assuming it's like a burger and fries. Cheeseburger or hamburger basket for free. And the child must be present. So, there's some good stuff going on. Meanwhile, over on Fox News, this is wild. They literally created an AI video of black women behaving badly and then presented it as news. I'll tell you about that. And also the risky loans from that era are coming back. And can fascism happen here? Stick around. We've got some more to talk about. Stay with us.